Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the City Governance Committee on the 30th of June 2020. I declare the meeting open at 9 a.m. I'd like to advise this meeting for all the attendees here as well that this meeting is being audio recorded. I'd like to begin today's meeting by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land on which we are gathered and pay my respect as elders past, present and emerging. I don't have any leave of absence and all councillors are in attendance. We'll start today's committee with item 4.1. I'd like to ask the Acting Business Transformation Manager, Ms Stapleton, please enter the discussions. And before we open for discussion on this item, do any councillors have any conflicts of interest they wish to declare? Okay, no conflicts of interest. I now refer to Acting Business Transformation Manager to open public discussion. Please proceed.
Good morning through the Chair. Mr Mayor, councillors, I take the report as being read. Council is an asset-intensive service business with a multi-billion-dollar investment of approximately $8 billion in physical assets. It would be fair to say that the asset management and maintenance of one of the most important and complex functions of any local government. Council is currently facing significant and ongoing cost and demand pressures in relation to service delivery. So the effective management and maintenance of these assets is critical to Council's business operations. More broadly, there is also considerable strategic, operational and financial risk associated with Council's asset management and service decisions. In view of this, a strategic asset and service management approach is required that enables Council to effectively and sustainably plan, deliver, maintain asset-based services to meet the needs of the Logan community and deliver specified levels of service at the lowest possible whole-of-life cost while adequately controlling for risks to the community and the organisation. In the report, we've set out the new council, the history of the project to the present, and the completion of phase 1 of the planned 3 project phases, including phase 1 benefits delivered and the investment to date. To date, the Strategic Asset Maintenance and Management Project has implemented phase 1 for plant fleet services and Logan water businesses. The key areas of phase 1 addresses the design, configuration, building, testing and implementation of the Technology One solution across identified activity areas, including a mobility platform, an asset management data model, an asset register, a works order management solution, inspection and defects solution, job costing, and we've developed core interfaces for the GIS, pathway and our document management system. We've also just implemented an analytics and dashboard module that enables extensive reporting for management and the executive. We've also addressed business and process change. This includes process mapping, redesign and new procedure development, staff training across major branches, which includes buy-in, system awareness, mobility and procedural changes, and the business impact. As the project has been running for a period beyond its originally anticipated completion date, we determined in consultation with the Steering Committee at the end of 2019 that it would be prudent to complete an independent review of the project, which was undertaken by KPMG, and that was before proceeding to phase 2. We've included in the report the key findings and recommendations of the KPMG review in the report, which the steering committee accepted and the business transformation branch has begun implementing. In summary, these recommendations related to a pause of the project to allow for the focused completion of Phase 1 by 30 June and the realisation of the referenced benefits, which we've included in the report. And 2, we've developed a transition plan that included the development of a more contemporary and robust business case. We've also set out for Council's benefit, the scope and key activities that form the backbone of the transition plan, the key deliverable of which will be the new business case to be completed by the end of November this year. Once the business case is completed and endorsed by the steering committee, we will return to Council to seek funding support for the completion of SAMS Phase 2 and 3. We're happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms Stapleton. I will open the floor for councillors for discussion. But before I do, can I just ask who's on the steering committee?
The steering committee consists of the Acting Chief Executive Officer, the Director of Organisational Services, the Director of Roads and Infrastructure, and the Director of City and Innovation and City Transformation.
Thank you so much. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Stemp.
Through the chair, so the committee is pretty confident that they can get back on track with the project to completion. And is there an idea of the cost to take it through to the end of the project at this stage?
Through the chair, yes, we've had example projects that KPMG have resourced for us across southeast Queensland and also across Australia as well with local governments. They range. We're looking at in the tens of millions or below that. So it really is dependent on the level of support that you require for the organisation. Noting that Logan City is the 6th largest in Australia, so it would be quite complex.
Thank you.
Any other questions? The recommendation is on page 4 to receive the report. Is someone happy to move that? Councillor Bannon, Councillor Raven has second. Can I have a show of hands, please? That is everyone. That is carried. Thank you so much. That marks the end of the Business Transformation Manager's report. Is there any general business for the manager? No general business. Thank you so much, Ms Stapleton.
Thank you.
I will now refer to item 5.1 and I ask the Director of Innovation and City Transformation, Mr Burke, please enter the discussions. And I notice that item 5.1 has a confidential report. Do any councillors wish to move their meeting into closed session to discuss the contents of the confidential report? Councillor Kransky, you're wanting to move. Councillor Hall has seconded that. Can I have a show of hands who is in support of going into confidential? That is unanimous. Thank you so much. So we'll do that again, please, because I didn't do which section of the regulation. So I note that Councillor Karansky has moved to close this meeting to the public in accordance with section 2751H of the Local Government Regulations 2012. This report is considered confidential due to the following reason. The confidential attachments include information relating to Council's budget, and Councillor Hall has seconded that we go into confidential. I'll just ask again that councillors put their hands up again. Thank you, that is unanimous, thank you. The motion is carried. The meeting is now closed to the public. I'll now kindly request that all members of the public please leave the room. You will be notified when the meeting is reopened. The recording of this meeting will now be suspended until the meeting reopens. Thank you. Okay, I now open the floor to vote. Is there a mover for the motion? Councillor Lane, seconder Councillor Bannon. Can I have a show of hands, please? Who is in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you so much. That marks the end of the Director of Innovation and City Transformations report. Is there any general business for the Director? No general business. Mr Burke, do you have any general business for councillors?
I don't thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now move to the next item, which is item 6.1. Can the Finance Manager, Ms Bugg, please enter the discussions? And before we open discussions on this item, do any councillors have any conflicts of interest they wish to declare? There being none, I refer to the Finance Manager to open the discussion. Ms Bugg, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chair. This is the Executive Financial Report for May. I take the report as read and would like to just make the following comments. You'll note that the operating margin is currently $2.1 million deficit. There are $1.23 million worth of COVID expenses that we're tracking to the end of May. The income is difficult to track, however we can confirm that the licence fees that have been refunded or waived under the relief package for COVID are in excess of $500,000 to the end of May. And water consumption still a significant variance due to the dry weather, both revenue and expenses, but that is a pass-through expense. The only other item I'd note is that to the end of May, our outstanding rates were tracking as they were last year, which is somewhat surprising given the COVID impacts, but we're watching that one quite closely, and the recoveries team are talking with many ratepayers to ensure that they can maintain their rates payments. I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you. Could you just clarify what you said about the operating, we're in operating deficit, what is that?
Yes, so we're currently in operating deficit. At the moment you'll see that on the summary page, and that is $2.122 million.
2.1.
Correct.
And could you just explain, please, what that's in relation to, just for the record for listeners, but also obviously we've got people in the audience as well.
Can I just, sorry, through the Chair, can I just make a correction? That's the variance, the actual operating deficit.
Mr Strachan, sorry.
Sorry. Just through the Chair, just to correct the record, on the audio recording, the actual deficit is $1.9 million.
That's what I thought it was.
The variance is the figure that was quoted by the Finance Manager.
Thank you. That's why I asked the question, because I thought it was 1.92. Thank you.
My apologies, sorry.
Okay, do we have any questions from councillors? No questions. There is a recommendation on page 19. Is someone happy to move that recommendation? Mr Mayor and Councillor Lane has second. Can I have a show of hands, please, who's in support of that? That is unanimous. Thank you so much. That marks the end of the Finance Manager's reports. Is there any general business for the Manager? No general business. Do you have any general business for us, Ms Bugg?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. We'll move on to the next item now. I'll now refer to item 7.1. Can the Administration Manager, Ms Sullivan, please enter the discussions. Before I open discussions on this item, do any councillors wish to declare a conflict of interest? No conflict of interest. I note that item 7.1 has a confidential report. Do any councillors wish to move the meeting into closed session to discuss the contents of the confidential report? Councillor Murphy, is there a seconder? Councillor Kerensky, can I have a show of hands, please? Mr Mayor and Councillor Mike, are you support of that?
Moving into confidential.
Moving into confidential. Thank you. That is carried unanimously. I note that Mr Mayor has moved I've missed that up again, sorry. That Mr Mayor has moved close the meeting to the public in accordance with section 2751H of the Local Government Regulations 2012. This report is considered confidential due to the following reasons. It contains business for which a public discussion would be likely to prejudice the interests of the local government or someone else, or enable a person to gain a financial advantage. Councillor Lane, second that. Can I just have a show of hands again, just to make sure that I follow the process properly? Thank you, that is unanimous. The motion is carried. The meeting is now closed to the public. Please be advised that the meeting is now a confidential session and therefore the recording of this meeting will be suspended until it reopens. Okay, I note that Councillor Murphy has moved to close this meeting to the public in accordance with section 2751H of the Local Government Regulations 2012. This record is considered confidential due to the following reason. It contains business for which a public discussion would be likely to prejudice the interests of local government or someone else, or enable a person to gain a financial advantage. Is there a seconder to close the meeting? Councillor Kerensky. I now ask you to put your hands up if you're in support of going into confidential. Thank you, that is unanimous and carried. The motion is carried. The meeting is now closed to the public. Please be advised that the meeting is now in confidential session and therefore the recordings of this meeting will be suspended until it reopens. Thank you so much. Is there a mover for the motion as displayed on the screen? Councillor Murphy has moved. Is there a seconder? Councillor Wilcox has seconded. Can I have a show of hands? Who is in support? It is unanimous. Thank you. Okay, I will now refer to item 9.1, which is a late report. Before we open discussion on this item, do any councillors have a conflict of interest they wish to declare? I noted that item 9.1 has a confidential report. Do any councillors wish to move the meeting into closed session to discuss the contents of the confidential report? Councillor Lane has moved us to go into confidential. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Kerensky. I note that Councillor Lane has moved to close this meeting to the public in accordance with section 2751H of the Local Government Regulations 2012. This report is considered confidential due to the following reason. The report includes information that is commercial in confidence, which would be likely to prejudice the interests of local government or someone else, or enable a person to gain a financial advantage. Is there a seconder to close the meeting? Councillor Russell has seconded. I now open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That is unanimous. Thank you so much. The motion is carried. The meeting is now closed to the public. Please be advised the meeting is now in confidential session and therefore the recording of this meeting will be suspended until it reopens. Is there a mover for the motion that is on the board? Councillor Lane has moved that. Is there a seconder? Councillor Kerensky, can I have a show of hands who is in support of that, please? That has been carried unanimously. Thank you very much. I'll now refer to the second late report, being item 9.2. Before we open discussion on this item, do any councillors have a conflict of interest they wish to declare? Okay, there being none, I now refer to the Administration Manager to open public discussions. Ms Sullivan, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chair. The intent of report 9.2, or the purpose of this report, is to identify options for the appointment of a committee of councillors to support council's procurement and appropriations activities. The report contemplates three options. The first option is expanding the City Governance Committee terms of reference. This option involves the least time, effort and resources to establish. The second option is to establish an advisory committee. This option involves the most time, effort and resources to establish. And then the third option is to establish an advisory group, and this option will involve the second most time, effort and resources to establish. In developing these three options, there are, as part of the report, legal requirements around naming conventions, terms of reference and scope, which have been taken into consideration, and therefore the recommendation of the report is that balancing all of the above, the establishment of a procurement and appropriations advisory group, as in option 3, would be the preferred option for council to move forwards with.
Thank you, Ms Sullivan. I now open the floor for councillors for discussion, and we'll start with Councillor Herrimeyer.
Thank you, Chair. And through the Chair, is this report in response to the GB motion passed in the last council meeting?
Through the Chair, that's correct, Councillor Herrimeyer.
Well, that's good to hear. And for the other councillors, here's a bit of a background of this. So in the last council meeting, we voted for a strategic direction and asked the bureaucrats to create a report on the establishment of the Procurement and Appropriations Oversight Committee. Now, one day before today, yesterday, we received a late report that doesn't even address what we asked for. Now, this is very simple. We asked for something and they came back with something completely different. This is very concerning. For our organisation to work, councillors and bureaucrats need to respect each other's roles. The bureaucrat should respect the role of councillors. Councillors make the strategic decisions because we have the trust of thousands and thousands and thousands of residents across our city. The bureaucrats make the operational decisions, and I'm so glad to report that I've only seen the greatest respect from our councillors to our hard-working staff. Now, I'm really disappointed by this report. To be honest, I feel bad for anyone who printed it. There could be 3 reasons why this report got it so wrong. The first one is maybe management is expanding its role into strategy. Now, I don't believe that's the case because our council has really strong governance practices. So maybe the author didn't have the appropriate skill set. If so, I encourage the author to contact their immediate manager. Or maybe further clarification was needed.
Councillor Herrimeyer, please don't degrade staff here.
That was not degrading staff. Both Councillor Raven and I were very available. I wrote a statement of understanding and sent it to our bureaucrats. When I read through this report, I can see that my words have been copied and pasted out of my document into the report. Now, through the Chair, that's not okay. It's not good. I've written a motion and sent it to the Secretariat. In this motion, we'll get this back on track. This is a simple process and it shouldn't be this complicated. Oh, and I move that motion.
Can we see the motion?
What motion are you moving, please?
It should come up on the board soon.
When it comes up, could we read it out loud, please?
Could you please read it out loud, because that's the first I've seen of this motion.
Yeah, I'll read it. that the establishment of the Procurement and Appropriations Special Committee be endorsed, that the Director of Organisational Services be requested to prepare a report to the ordinary council meeting to be held on the 8th of June 2020, detailing the Procurement and Appropriations Special Committee's terms of reference, that the Director of Organisational Services be requested to make the necessary arrangements to facilitate the election of the chairperson of the Procurement and Appropriations Special Committee at the ordinary council meeting to be held on the 8th of June 2020.
Any councillors have any questions they wish to ask? Councillors, please do not speak between yourselves. Any questions?
No, we can do it.
Okay.
We've got questions.
Councillor Owen.
Just to clarify, a question. I understand where Councillor Heremione is coming from, and and I'm thrilled to see that there'll be a special committee that I hope he'll put his hand up to be chair of, because then everyone will either be a chair or a deputy chair. Robert, is it possible to do what's in this recommendation in the timeframe outlined?
Thanks for the opportunity to speak. Through the chair, I don't know where to start. It's always difficult, couple of things. We have had subsequent meetings since the last council meeting in relation to this GB item. And my understanding from those meetings is that we've delivered a report that that agrees with what was discussed with regard to setting up a advisory group that didn't have the same, I suppose, obligations as a local government meeting, as a committee under the Local Government Act. So if I misunderstood what was discussed at that particular meeting, I apologise, but I think the report does reflect what was discussed. It's always difficult there's a lot of other activities going on, and to try and meet deadlines in relation to GB items where reports are requested at the following round of a committee or the following ordinary council meeting leads to the issues that Councillor Heremione has just articulated, in that not everyone gets a really good understanding of what's required in the report. So with all due respect, I think trying to rush this through is potentially creating some of these issues. I would appreciate some more time to draft terms of reference that are probably more widely consulted, so that I don't get it wrong moving forward. And I don't believe that could be done by the next ordinary council meeting.
Thank you, Robert. And so I'm just trying to understand the special committee. This is more of a question for Councillor Heremione, if you'll allow me that leeway, Madam Chair.
I will allow you to.
Thank you. Is your vision, Councillor Heremione, that the special committee would report up to this committee, as it's like it would be subordinate to the governance committee?
That's correct.
And the reason that you want it to be a special committee is so that it has a formal report with recommendations that come to this committee for all councillors to vote on?
That's correct.
Cool. I'm just trying to articulate and is there a reason why you chose the special committee model as your preference ahead of the advisory group?
The main reason is because I was reading through this report and it really reminded me back to a couple months ago now, where I really wanted to come into council and to learn more and to do my job well. And I needed to come in after hours to make phone calls. I needed to come in on the weekend to talk to residents and read through these papers. And I had to put in a general business motion, receive a report, do 4 weeks of red tape because we couldn't just have 24/7 access straight away. Now, there's that difficulty to get things done. And the reason why it needs to be a special committee is because if we want any real results, we need to have some teeth. And that's the reason why it's a special committee.
Fair enough. And sorry, last question, Madam Chair, if you'll continue to indulge me. And so do you see this as being a committee that meets every round, or would you see it as being less frequent than that?
Much less frequent. I'm thinking quarterly, but there'll be terms of reference and we'll nail that out. But I'm thinking around quarterly.
Cool, thank you. And sorry, last one for Robert. If not by this council round, then what would be a reasonable time frame for you?
by the following round of committee meetings.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question? Mr. Strachan, who had the meeting with you? Which councillors? Because I wasn't involved, but who had the meeting?
No, I had a meeting with Councillor Hermeyer, because it was Councillor Hermeyer's GB item, and Councillor Raven, the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Okay. With, yeah, I do have a couple of councillors who wish to speak. Councillor Wilcox and then Councillor Karansky. And I'm just mindful of what Robert has just said. Mr. Strachan has just said that he probably needs a time frame for next round of committees. So, Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you. Through the chair, just wondering, Councillor Hermite, is there two typos up there? It says the 8th of June. Is it meant to say 8th of July?
Yeah, it is. Can we please amend that from 8th of June to the 29th of July?
Excellent. That was going to be my next question, so that we can investigate it and get the wording correct. The only other thing that I would like to comment on, if someone can actually clarify this, a special committee says that it's actually in the short term, whereas my understanding of an advisory committee could be used longer term, so that we could actually investigate it more and that sort of thing. So I'm not sure. Would it be more appropriate to have an advisory rather than a special committee if we want to have it quarterly and if we want to do it longer term?
Are you asking this to all councillors or directly to one councillor?
Whoever can answer.
Okay. Do you want to answer, Mr.
Yeah, as the report articulates, so through the chair, special committee is generally set up for a single issue for a particular period of time. So, for example, we used to have one in relation to city deals. Was set up for a particular purpose. That purpose kind of ended, so the special committee was dissolved. So generally, it's for a particular purpose. This could be a particular purpose. I'm not sure what Councillor Hermeyer's vision is in relation to how long this might keep going. It might keep going until the work of the committee in relation to our procurement program is completed, and then there would be no longer any requirement for it to be to exist. It could be wound up. The one benefit of an advisory committee is that you can have external members to an advisory committee, whereas you don't have an external members to a special committee.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, I don't, but I think Mr.
No. Councillor Karansky and then Councillor Hermite.
I just wanted to make a couple of comments. First of all, with the recommendation that's on the board and accepting the time frame, Robert, is that something that you see as reasonable and doable for you guys?
Yes, yeah, that is reasonable. I think that is also the next ordinary council meeting date. You could potentially make that the next City Governance Committee date if you wanted to.
So we could bring that forward a little. Okay. Seems that perhaps there was a little bit of a breakdown in communication, and just as a bit of a general comment, something I'm struggling with as a councillor is, and it's not directed at anyone, but late reports and the lateness which I'm receiving things, there's not a lot of opportunity to go and seek further information before we land into committees. So some of this might have been able to have been resolved offline before we actually got in here today. So I would just like to highlight that, and that's not exclusive to city governance, that's happening more broadly across the org. So I would just flag that the lateness of the reports means that we're not having an opportunity to seek further information, which may have been helpful in this instance. I would just like to comment that in the last council we had special committees, of which Councillor Raven was the chair of one, and we were looking at the city centres, and that model actually worked really effectively from my experience. I had one of the city centres in my area, and it reported up to council probably a little more regularly than it might have needed to. But as the area councillor, I had a lot of involvement and so on in that. So I'm actually a bit of a fan of this special committee, because provided that it's set up well, but that worked particularly well, and I certainly felt as a councillor I was informed and engaged, and coming back to a committee process put some rigour around that, which meant that we had some formal information that was coming through and being recorded appropriately. So I'm not opposed to supporting the notion of a special committee. And yeah, I certainly just encourage the conversation maybe to get everybody back in the room together and to nut it out a little bit further, and happy to look at it again when the next round comes up, or the following round.
Okay. Before I go to Councillor Jeremiah, the recommendations are being altered for the city governance, is that correct? Are you comfortable with that, Councillor Jeremiah?
Robert, if we figure out the terms of reference on the 21st, is that enough time to then escalate it to the ordinary on the 28th? Or will we have to wait until August?
No, if we, so the vision would be that the report that would go to the next round of the Governance Committee on the 21st would include the terms of reference, which would then be just adopted by Council in the following ordinary Council meeting.
Easy.
You're comfortable with that?
That's awesome.
Okay. Any other questions from councillors? Councillor Raven.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a show of sentiment, I think because to have a special committee, you have to have enough councillors who would be willing to participate. Which councillors are keen to be involved in the special committee? Because if there's no point creating a committee if you're not going to have at least 4 or 5 of us present. You don't need a quorum, like you don't need 7 councillors on a committee, you can have less.
So you're asking me to ask councillors to put their hands up, is that what you're...
Yeah, just an indication of if they're keen to do it.
Councillors who wish to be on this, put your hands up, please.
I think Councillor Bannon would like to as well.
Cool, awesome, that's all.
You would need to...
hang on a minute, I'll just say who they are. Councillor Fraser, put your hand up. Councillor Jeremiah, myself, Councillor Wilcox, Councillor Murphy, and Mr Mayor, and Councillor Bannon, who's just walked back into the room. Do you want to be on
Would
this...
you sit on this committee?
This particular committee? Yeah, Councillor Bannon would also like to. So I'm just doing that for the purpose of the record.
Appreciate that, Madam Chair.
Any other questions from councillors before I ask for a mover? Councillor Jeremiah.
Just what Natalie said.
Councillor Wilcox.
Oh yeah, Councillor Wilcox, sorry. Teresa and I were talking about it, and it's actually pretty...
Lane.
Councillor Lane, yeah, and I were talking about it, and it's actually really exciting because we're basing it off, I think it was federal select committees, and we don't use select here, we use special, but that's why we think special is a good the best model to use. Yeah.
Okay. As soon as you said that, other councillors put their hand up. Councillor Karansky, then Councillor Lane.
I'll be brief. I was just going to say, did I hear from Councillor Jeremiah before that you would be willing to chair this committee?
Yeah, I'd give it a go.
All right, I just wanted to capture that in the room. Just wanted to make sure I was noting that in my notes, Councillor Jeremiah.
Okay,
Thank you.
councillors, can I just ask, please, that you don't have these cross conversations, please? Go through the chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to get the sentiment from Councillor Jeremiah if he was prepared to put his hand up to chair the committee, because without a leader, we won't.
I understand, but please, in future, please...
I'm doing it now.
Ask to go through.
Sorry, I apologise, but I'm actually trying to correct the record by doing it now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Lane.
Through the Chair, Madam Chair, just to confirm that the conversation between Councillor Jeremiah and I yesterday in my office, which I thought was an A and B conversation, but we'll leave that for another day, was actually in relation to the setting up of a committee for the purposes of investigating something for a short period of time. And that's what Councillor Jeremiah is seeking to do. He's seeking to investigate and look into the procurement practices of council for the purposes of finding out whether or not we're getting bang for buck. Now, he's enthusiastic and he wants to get out there and have a crack at it, and I'm fully supportive of listening to him come in and express his frustrations anytime, so long as he doesn't repeat the conversation. I just think in terms of this, it's not a bad thing to set up. We can trial it for a specific period of time and then move forward with it. It's not a bad thing to do, and I don't think that it should be met with any sort of resistance, given we're an open and transparent council who've sat here for week after week after week telling us how open and transparent we are.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions before I ask for a mover? Okay, someone happy to move the recommendations? Councillor Herrenmeyer. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hall. Can I have a show of hands who is in support, please? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. That marks the end of the administration manager's reports. Is there any general business for the manager? There being none, do you have any general business, Ms Sullivan?
No, just a comment through the chair. I'd just like to echo Councillor Lane's sentiments with the previous report. Quite delighted at the interest in procurement and the visibility that will bring. So thank you, councillors.
I can echo that as well. Mr Strachan, do you have any general business for councillors or any general business for Mr Strachan? There being none, I note that due to social distancing restrictions, not all managers or staff could attend today. That being said, this completes our agenda for today. I declare the City Governance Committee meeting of 30th of June 2020 concluded at 10:44. The City Infrastructure Committee will commence in 10 minutes. Thank you, everyone.